people here tonight need to know what, in order of what was transpired at our retreat meeting, so you can be knowledgeable on what took place. I'm sure you want to know about that, so can we share what was shared or what we decided at the retreat? They need to know about this.
Okay, sure, I'll be glad to try to do this, since you guys were more vital part of it. I don't want to say what other folks got out of it, so. But basically what happened at the retreat, the board had a retreat to talk about the different kinds of options that might be available. Generally, there seemed to be a view that the board wanted to reconsider its choices on mitigation. And so it wanted to look at those, and we had a presentation from FEMA at that retreat, again going over the basic information that FEMA had given us before, and then kind of a compilation of the information from Army Corps of Engineers. So just to recite that again, it is basically that what the environmental assessment has shown is that the town of Princeville has traditionally had a major flood, every 20 years. And that goes back to the 1700s. Number two, those floods, especially since the dike has been built, have been more dramatic. The two that happened in '99 and then Matthew. Number three, that if money was appropriated today, that before it would be 2024, before the first shovel would be put in the ground to do the work on the dike, at the earliest, and very likely it would be longer than that. And then three, that and it would probably take as much as 3 years to do the work. And with that work, you'd be able to get to the 76% possibilities of handling a Matthew. And I think those, just to recite, I believe that's the basic information that's out there. Now, so with that understanding, I think that they tried to encourage the board to look at the decisions it's made in the past. And the FEMA had opened the door for the state to delay its submission of its grant application, so that the grant application from the town of Princeville is not due until April 10th. But it will take a couple of weeks before that for them to process it. So, and then we'll have to do some processing as well. So the idea was that when we kind of got our schedule back, basically the board has 2 weeks from tonight to reconsider whether it wants to change the way it is allocated funding. So that is, I think, the essence of where it is. And I sent out to the board and probably was going to make available to the press over the next couple of weeks a series of models that they just kind of been talked about generally. And I don't want to kind of go much further than that but the models are, the first one would modify the current proposal, which is the approvals that have already been done and the denials that have been done on hazard mitigation funding. It would modify that proposal and approve the fund, for the program for those who had opted out. When we contacted some people, they chose not to be a part of the program. What we would do is reprogram that money for folks who are in the most vulnerable areas. The most vulnerable areas are the areas closest to the town hall and kind of the west of 2nd Street, okay? The deepest part of the town. It would open the door for us to reprogram that money and any additional money from FEMA or from CDBG would be allowed for acquisition in the most vulnerable areas. Okay? So that's model one. Model two adds to that one to remove from applications those homeowners that were not damaged. We had about 15, I believe, or so, of the people who had been approved for elevation had not actually been damaged in Matthew. They've been damaged in Floyd, but not in Matthew. Okay? And so it would be to eliminate, replace those applications with new applications from people who are in the most vulnerable areas to allow for additional acquisition. Model 3 adds 1, 2, and then adds to that third one to delete the option of elevation for anyone. And it would say that rather than providing for any elevations, that the only option available would be for acquisition of property or buyback, as people call it, buyouts. And that one, the previous one before that would only be for owner-occupied units. The third one opens it up to landlords as well. And then Model 4 eliminates the previous application and takes all of the funds, previous and future funds, and allocates it to the most vulnerable area, the area that is closest in the lowest part of the community. And it would then have all those properties be, we would attempt to purchase all of those properties for acquisition or buyout in that area. Now, in the, I think that there's some question about whether, in the options that I gave, I suggested that all the acquisitions had to be relocated to the 53 acres. So, in any of the proposals, that was mine. I think that there's been some question about, I think one of the folks from the state suggested they didn't think it was legal, that even though they haven't been able to show that. Yeah, he hasn't been able to show that, but he said he thought it wasn't. But I think there's some practical problems that he's correct about. But I'm not sure that there's a legal problem with it. But in any case, I think that he agreed that the idea is that whether you did that by a requirement or by incentives, you would somehow you could make that happen if that's what the board wanted to do. Okay. The other thing is, and this was kind of the part that I've been spending some time with the FEMA and the state folks that I probably feel the strongest about, and that is that if you consider options 3 and 4, which would mean if you're talking about a large number of citizens would have to be uprooted and moved to another part of town at the least, and under that scenario, I probably feel the strongest that if you did that, I would encourage you to have a set-aside group of staff and an organizational structure separate from the town that would walk with those folks through the next 3 to 4 years of dedicated work, working with families on a day-to-day basis to work through how you do that, how try to take care of their individual needs, individual assistance issues throughout that process so that you don't lose those folks. And they can have some comfort that what you've committed to them would actually happen. And I suppose the other part of that was the idea that I would be asking our partners, FEMA and the state, to do 2 things. 1, to fund the positions, and 2, to expedite their approval process. If we're willing to take those fairly extraordinary steps, that the least that they ought to do is to guarantee that with the speed at which it happens, and provide the resources for the staffing to work with folks through it. Organizationally, I think you could set up what in some places might be referred to something like, and I say like, a redevelopment commission or authority process. And I say that only, not because it would model that directly, but I think some models similar to that, where you've already got a group of legal, the legal issues have been resolved, and the practical problems have been handled, so that you've got some certainty about how things happen, and won't be one staff person trying to figure it out and read to figure it out. You know, redevelopment commissions have a long history of working through some of these issues, you know, for when someone dies, or when, you know, what happens if the property gets, you know, has liens. Those kinds of issues, those folks have already figured those things out. And so that's my only, so probably, I'm sorry, my additional consideration for me was a bigger issue than the issue about which one of the models. Because I think when you start having those many folks and you create that much uncertainty, that people need something to depend on. That's my.
Okay. We all were there at this retreat, and we may have different takes on what we got from the retreat. Echoing some of the stuff that Tom Mary was telling you, I got from the meeting that from Mrs. Libby Turner of FEMA and Mr. Thatcher of North Carolina DPS, that there was no money coming down the pipe for Princeville. They have been trying to tell us this through all of these meetings you all been coming to, and they haven't put it on the table yet, but they put it on the table because we demanded and asked them, what are you trying to tell us? And she plainly says, Princeville shouldn't be expecting any money because there ain't nothing coming. And so when I asked Mr. Thatcher, a similar executive order that President Clinton left in '99 of relocating the town to a place of our choice, that was sent back, no interest in it by the administration at the time. And wait a minute, can you finish? Don't please don't do that. Yeah, please. Yeah. But because I got it in right. Anyway, what we were trying to do at this retreat, I asked them, is it possible for you to add relocation to the three options that you all made a choice on? And we got a letter back saying that it could be done, so that if you're gonna go out to 53 acres, it would be your choice whether you take the money or buy the property out there. And I think you need to know about that, because when she tells me, and I'm hearing it, ain't nothing coming, then I'm thinking about what am I going to do? And I know that you don't know nothing about it, but you need to be informed that that's what transpired from my opinion there. Anybody else got a different one? You all should.
And so, to add to what Commissioner Bullock mentioned, my concern from the information that was re-emphasized during the retreat as it relates to elevation is that if our citizens are required to elevate their homes 7 to 12 feet up, my concern, just as Ms. Worsley just mentioned, if our senior citizens are having a difficult time move in and out of low level for meals, how are they going to be mobilized 7 to 12 feet up? And not just that, the restriction with the properties. An additional concern to that is, are the homes in positions that can withstand an elevation? So those are the concerns that I walked away with. In addition to 3 to 5 years, once those maps are certified, then here comes the floodplain insurance. Will our citizens be able to afford that? Those are a lot of considerations and undue financial burden that I don't think is fair that we place on our citizens, but it's something for the citizens to think about as we continue to move through this mitigation process. And the reason why we decided on last meeting to reassess those three options, or to reassess the approved listing, that was done prior by the board, it's because acquisition was not considered by the board despite the vote on 12/19. So we want to be fair as we go through this process, and we want to filter the facts to the citizens so that you all are able to make a sound decision on your individual circumstances. And so having said that, that's why we're here, and that's why Mr. Bethay just outlined 4 models that are optional for the citizens to consider. But as a board, we need to reassess that based upon the information that continues to be filtered and re-emphasized in our communities. We want to do what's in the best interest of the town of Princeville, but we also want to put safety first as we move into our next generation for the town of Princeville.
Anyone else? Okay, let's move next to,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would ask for either a continuation of this meeting for 2 weeks or another meeting in 2 weeks to make a decision.
ladies and gentlemen, would you check your calendars? It'll be March
March 5th.
March 5th. Anyone not available, March 5th? Same time,
Same
7
time?
p.m.?
Yeah. And we'll just do this as a continuation of this meeting. Okay, so if we will, so the press is informed of the time. We don't have to re-advertise.
Thank you.
So at the end of this meeting, rather than adjourning, it will simply continue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consideration of approval of agreement with the town of Princeville and the Grove Law Firm.
Mayor, you have a copy of the agreement. I don't know if you have any questions. And my understanding was that you opted for the option that they would not be coming to board meeting unless specifically asked.
Correct. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Properly moved and second that
It's the attorney.
we accept the contract between the town of Princeville and the Grove Law Firm. Are there questions? All in favor, use the voting sign aye. Opposed, nay? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you're exactly correct on this one. We're really going to hold this one for one cycle. We haven't been able to get bids on it.
Okay.
And we want to be able to do this. I think everybody wants to do it though.
Okay. Thank you. So we're gonna table action item B.
Yes.
Okay, is that 2 weeks or?
It's for 2 weeks.
Okay. And that's to get 2 additional bids?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do we need a motion on that?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's good. If you don't-
Okay. Next item, consideration of the establishment of the Blue Ribbon Committee to find resources to complete work on the dike.
Mr. Mayor, what we're doing is, each one of your items, we're contacting citizens who speak at your hearing. We're giving them the information. Anything that we think is an action item, we're putting it on your agenda for an action.
Okay.
All right. The question has been on whether or not you want to establish a Blue Ribbon Committee.
Okay.
And so that's where it's coming from. We don't have an opinion one way or the other than we think that you ought to resolve it.
Okay.
Yeah, either have one or no. And so,
Board? Is there anyone that can bring in additional funding for the town of Princeville? I'm all for it, but it's up to the board.
I think you could, each member could select a member, a citizen who'd be one to be on the committee. We'd be glad to work with them on what we can do to help encourage funding for the dike.
I think we can, that would be a good idea if each one of us select someone from the community to be part of that committee. It certainly would be an additional help to the community. I don't see anything that would be negative about it.
When is the time frame you looking at?
Well, I'd be glad to do, yeah, if you guys would like to establish committee, select members, you can bring members to be selected at your next meeting. And then what we do is get them together and work out a timeline of what they could do.
I'd like to make a suggestion.
Sure.
Since we already have a special interest group in Princeville, why can't we, it was suggested last year, we need to bring them into the fold so that we can absorb some of their resources, their ideas and concepts, because they're already there, but nobody is really listening to them. And it's more of a controversial than it is something pro-verbal as far as moving forward. And I think there used to be a Blue Ribbon Committee somewhere in Princeville, and you may be able to pull that back together because the special interest still may be there. Yeah.
I don't know where they're.
What you're referring to, I think we already have a listing of names that, maybe Ms. Powell can go back and pull from the minutes.
What you,
That was, what year was that? 16, 15?
We'll pass
16,
those
16.
out to you, and then if you can add some additional names or whatever, we'd be glad to, however you'd like to establish.
Anything else? Blue Ribbon Commission? Next item on the agenda, motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters, NCGS 143-318.11A6.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, the report was simply to say that Ms. Powell is not acting anymore.
That's right.
She's not been acting in a long time, but it was still showing her title as being acting, so wanted to just take that off.
and that would be changed to what?
She is now, she's the town clerk finance officer. She's been acting in those roles, so.
I'd like to ask a question on that. Will Ms. Powell be reporting to the board or to you?
To me. Or whoever's manager.
Is that all right with you, ma'am?
So far.
It's a daily decision on her part.
Yeah, but I have a reason for asking.
I understand.
And before we go into closed session, I would like to recognize Judge Fitch, retired Judge Fitch, ready to run for Senate.
Yes, sir.
You have anything to add?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor and to the commissioners, to my soon-to-be colleague from the General Assembly, ladies and gentlemen. This is the longest in 18 years that I've ever sat in one place and not said sustain or overrule. These are indeed challenging times. They're challenging times in the world. They're certainly challenging times for Princeville. History should be preserved, and we know that the status for which Princeville occupies, strong decisions, strong follow-up has to take place. I pledge for you when I go to Raleigh to do all that I can. I don't want to make this political, but these are lean years, and you're going to hear more and more and more that we don't have and you can't get. And so I encourage you to vote. I don't care who you vote for, but vote. Folks have died for this precious right. When this country participates in that process, and we all have an opportunity to sit at the table, to legislate, we find that when we participate, the process works. If you don't do it, the process is lopsided. And so I encourage you all to keep right on. Keep me in your prayers, keep me in mind. When that day comes, hopefully I won't even have any opposition, but when that day comes, make sure you pull the lever that says Milton Fitch for Senate District Number 4, which is all of Wilson County, all of Edgecombe County, and all of Halifax County. I thank all of you for allowing me to have served you as both your state representative in the North Carolina House for approximately 20 years, for approximately 18 years as judge of this judicial district, and the last 7 or 8 years as your senior resident judge. Thank you very much, and I love Eastern North Carolina.
Thank you so much. Representative Willingham, you have anything to add?
I just want to get over what Judge Fitch said, and this is kind of fitting. When I first went to the General Assembly, I went to replace him when he was appointed judge. So now he's leaving the judgeship and coming back to the General Assembly. I'm just glad to be here, and I try to get around to all my town meetings at least once. And I got 22 towns and communities in the district. I got all of Edgecombe County and all of Martin County. And it's kind of taxing sometimes, but I do try to get around at least for once. And I will say to you that, listening to the discussion, again, I'm kind of like Toby here, he said it's kind of tough to sit and not say anything when you listen to stuff. I just want to say that I serve on the House Select Committee on Disaster, and we are discussing Princeville, and there are things that are happening. Any money that comes, I can tell you this, that it's going to have to come from the state. And we are taking another look at our budget to see if there are things there that we can do to take care of some of the unmet needs and some of the concerns that are coming out. And I can assure you that we're fighting for Princeville up there. And in our meetings, most of our discussion is really about Princeville and a place called Fairbluff down in Robertson County, I think. So people understand that there's a need here, and so we're trying to do everything that we can to see if we can have some positive impact. And right now I'm in discussion with some people at the state, and so I want to begin with the mayor. I think they know that we can sit down and talk to you and the manager about some ideas that's been going around, and see if there's something that we can do to speed up the process of moving Princeville forward. And just to shift a little bit, I'm going to put on my other hat. I know there's been a lot of discussion about the ABC system, the ABC store up there. And I happen to be the chairman of the ABC board for Edgecombe County.
Yeah, I need my fifth.
Yeah, and I got a fifth in the pay me later. But I just want to let you know that, of course, the store was flooded the second time, and we take a look at the situation here in Princeville every month in our meetings. And the decision that we make will be a business decision, when and where we would put a store in Princeville. You might have seen that we did remove the ABC sign. Of course, the sign is up because there's no store there, so we took the sign down. But that does not mean that we're not coming back to Princeville, and it doesn't mean that we are either. But I can tell you that no decision has been made, and we are, looking at that. And when we do make a decision, it's based on it's a business decision. We're one of the few agencies in the county. We're a county and we're not county. That's the way we look at it. We're kind of quasi. But we give money to the county. We're not in the county budget. They don't put us on their budget. We give money to the county. All the money that we make, it goes to the county. So that means that we're the custodians of your money, your tax money. So we want to make sure that we do that in a responsible way. So again, you know, I appreciate you having me here, and of course, if there's any question about the ABC store, I'll be glad to answer that. And also, I'll say that, you know, as your representative, you know, if you have some questions that you feel like you're not getting answered here, you know, feel free to give me a call and I'll try to get those answers for you. But I want to close by saying that Princeville is on the minds of the legislators up there, both Republicans and Democrats. You're aware of that. As a matter of fact, the chairman of the disaster committee is from Pitt County. So we talk, he's a Republican, but he understands this. And we might, in the very near future, probably come down here and have a meeting so the citizens can, you know, tell us what it is that you're really concerned about. And I know you've had a lot of meetings, and but everybody, we are trying to help. You know, we do have, we're trying to reposition some funds in our budget so that it can address the disaster. We met with FEMA, and we had a report from FEMA on what they're doing, and we're trying to make sure that they do everything that they can, and we're holding their feet to the fire. So be assured that we are looking out for you, and we're trying to do everything we can. And I thank you, and I enjoyed representing you for the last 4 or 5 years, and I hope you continue to do that. I did refile, and I'm up for re-election. Thank you.
And I want to take my hat off as the mayor right now and put it on as a public school educator. We need to know the people who are supporting public education because our kids are struggling. Lack of funding, our teachers are leaving, going to Virginia, going to South Carolina because of salary. We have subs in the classroom that do not know how to teach our children, but yet they want us to perform at the end of the year. It's not possible. Okay, anything from the board? Okay. Motion to go into the executive session. Second. No, I don't have to. Okay. The properly moving second that we go into closed session. All the questions. All in favor, use the voting sign aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Thank you very much.